Hello there, welcome back to another video with me, Charlotte Giblin. And we're at this amazing starting stage again together. And I say this at the beginning of each of my videos, but it's really worth pointing out every time that you know what this painting is going to look like because you've seen the thumbnail and you've signed up for the video. You want to see how I get there. But this is a really surreal moment for me because you're ahead of me and I actually don't know what this painting is going to look like, which is really exciting. And when you get to that stage of your painting play, shall we say, and you can allow yourself to start with a blank canvas and enjoy the unknown rather than being nervous about what it's going to look like, that's a really great place to be at. But don't forget, I've been doing this for a while. And for years, I just painted from photographs. So that has given me a very good understanding of how to put together a composition, but also to take some risks, have some fun, changing the colours. I've studied colour theory and of course done a lot of teaching, which is a really good way to explain about colour and how to get certain effects, which I can then use myself. So don't expect yourself to suddenly be able to confidently start with a blank canvas and just make something up. This is presumably one of the reasons why you're with me today. But just to let you know that the more that you can bring of your own small risk taking into your painting with me, the more you're going to enjoy it and the more fun I think you're going to have taking a little bit of control. So where I give the paint list and the primary colours that we're going to use, if you really don't like those colours, if you don't like the effects that they create, or if you don't have them but you really want to do this painting, use your own colours, use your own paints. I always say be really careful when you're using primary colours, especially blue, that you don't use a blue that already has a white mixed into it. So don't choose a light blue as your main primary blue because you'll get very, very different results. If you mix your light blue with a red, if there's already white in it, you won't get purple, you'll get a grey tone. So these are things that you learn with experience when you're working with primary colours and lots of different paints. But feel free to add in your own touches and use my guidance as just that, a guidance, a guide to how to create a certain look. And I'm going to be showing you loads of different techniques, but you will be able to pick and choose what you want to put in your final painting and what you want to leave out. I'm quite sure that through this process I'll be making some mistakes, and that's always really helpful to see, isn't it, when somebody else makes mistakes, and I will show you how I'll be correcting them. I will talk you through the whole process of decision making, how I mix the colours. I'll be showing you my palette as we go, and as always these videos are in real time. I think it's really important to be able to see an artist working. You'll pick things up from the way I hold the tools, and I will explain what I'm doing as I'm going. And the decisions I'm making, I will tell you why I'm making those decisions. I think so many artists can withhold that full process, which can create a bit of a block when you're wanting to learn. So I really enjoy having you present for the whole time, so you can actually see how I do a painting from start to finish. Now, I wouldn't normally be talking out loud to myself through the whole painting, but clearly that's not the point of these. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with some background sky and starting to form the painting layout. I'm feeling that this is going to be, I'm usually guided by my earrings, the earrings that I pick up for the day. So this is going to be perhaps an open field with some rolling hills and some nice flowers, abstract flowers. A lot of this is palette knife. I mean, you already know what the painting looks like, don't you? So why am I telling you what I think I'm going to do? What's unusual for me with this painting is that I've chosen a different blue, and that is ultramarine. I am usually a phthalo blue green shade girl. I love the warmth of that blue, but I think it's quite important to just push yourself a little bit, try some different colours. Ultramarine can sometimes feel a bit purpley for me, but I know it's a very popular colour, and I did a little bit of a test with some different primary colours. So it's really helpful to do this kind of thing, especially when you've got new paints. And I've got my ultramarine, I've tried some different yellows, red, tried a magenta, just did some big blobs all swirled together to see some of the different tones I could get. I was worried that that blue would make my grasses really muddy looking, but choosing a very cold yellow, so a really light yellow, is going to keep that freshness, which is what I really like. So let's get started. We're going to, that's a good start, knocking over the paint and all my palette knives with it. So this is just a cheap student white, which I've decanted into a paint, whatever these are called, a sauce bottle, in fact. And I love being able to do this. If you've got a sauce bottle, if you're using a really big quantity of white, or just getting into the habit of using your canvas as the palette. So you waste zero paint and it's not just lost on your palette, but it gives a different sense of play with the painting. You may have seen my blending a smooth sky video on YouTube, which is exactly the process I'm going to explain now, and starting through having, as you can see, a big snake of white. And I'm going to start with my 5 centimetre 2-inch brush and start by cake mixing. So this is having the bristles at 90 degrees to the canvas, so they really push through all the layers of the paint, mixing in circular motions all the way across. You can see that I put a good snaky sausage of paint over the top half, and I'm going to bring that down maybe about 2/3. So I actually put quite a lot of paint on. And once I've done my cake mixing, I'm going to go back and forth, long strokes. I have taped the sides of the canvas so I don't have to worry about any mess on the edges, and I can take my brush right across. Get used to bringing your brush from one side to the other, otherwise you'll get these sort of stop-start marks right at the edge of the canvas, which will create a frame. So I can even just do that all the way down the side, knowing that the side is protected when I take off the masking tape. So just getting in all of those big blobs. If you find you've got extra big blobs, you can just cut through with the cake mixing, and then I've got the brush on a very different soft angle, back and forth. If I've got loads and loads of paint, I'm just going to bring it all the way down. It doesn't matter if I cover up the canvas with any extra white, but I want to make sure I've got a good coverage. So when I start mixing you can see it's really thick, there's always drips appearing. When I start mixing the sky tone in, I've got a lot of moisture to keep the paint flowing. You'll notice as we go further down the instruction, right through all the process, that I hardly ever use water with my acrylics. And I think that's quite an important practice to get used to. Adding water into acrylic completely changes the nature of it. It's a lovely thick creamy paint, and if you dilute it, you can often create a hole in the paint. You also very greatly affect the strength of the colour. It's an excellent technique for getting fine detail, for getting the paint to flow, because sometimes acrylic can be a little bit gluggy. But don't feel that if your paint in the background here starts to drag, don't start adding water, because you will actually pull the paint away. Put a little bit more white on. So I've got a really good creamy layer of white. It's almost filled the whole canvas, and that's all right. I don't mind having that extra layer of paint down here, which I might not use. And then you can see from my palette, and I just put baking paper over a tray, plastic tray. It's actually better for the environment, believe it or not, to throw away any leftover paint rather than washing it down the sink, because it's plastic based. But try and use as much paint as possible so you're not wasting any. And so I would suggest start with small blobs And you can always cover this up with another tray over the top if you need to step away for a few minutes to halt the drying process. So I've got my ultramarine on the left here. I'm going to start with a very small amount. Blue is incredibly powerful, very staining colour. So you can see I'm just dipping the end of my brush into the blue. And from here, starting up in one corner, I'm just going to put a few little dots and blobs and then cake mix again. So my bristles are at 90 degrees to the canvas and I'm mixing that colour right the way through all of the layers. And when I've done that, then I move left to right with the brush. Now you can see that there are all sorts of streaks and stripes appearing, which is completely fine. Just at the moment, I'm not worried about those. I want to make sure that I get the intensity of colour that I'm after before I really worry about eradicating any lines and stripes. Now this is where you will start to develop your own sense of colour intensity and what you want to have in your painting. You might really enjoy a very light, misty kind of feel to your painting. You could have put on an incredibly large quantity of blue straight away and feel that it's very, very deep and dark. That might be exactly what you're after. So you need to adjust the blue to suit your taste and what you want to see with the painting. I'm taking some more blue, dipped it in. I've got a whole edge of the blue here. What I'm going to do, put some vertical stripes all the way along, cake mix right the way through. This cuts through all of the layers of paint right through to the canvas. I can use that, you might be able to see the canvas wobbling a little bit, using quite a lot of pressure. I'm just going to create that swirly mix right through. You can see about the top third of the canvas. Now there's not very much blue left on my brush, but enough for I know that if I start using the brush here, you see how much blue is still left in. It's very, very staining colour. So I'm going to go back over this top section with the sky, left to right, left to right. Now it might feel counterintuitive, but the lighter and slower that you make your marks as you're blending, the longer the paint will remain thick and moisture, filled with moisture. Wet, it will remain wet. Who needs fancy words? The faster that you use the brush, the more friction that you create, and so the more it will heat up and the paint will dry far more quickly. Far quicker, far more quickly. I'm just painting, don't hold me to account with my grammar. So you can see how now I'm getting much more of an even blend simply from going back and forth in a really lovely, smooth, almost meditative state. You may find that you have some really big streaks appearing. I'll just show you what to do. If you do have quite a strong patch or a streak like that through the middle of your sky, simply cake mix, which cuts through any of the blobs. It evens out where those blobs are, and then you can go back and forth. You see how that's got rid of those marks. So this is, I can feel that the paint is starting to not dry, but I'm starting to get, you'll find a lot of paint on the edges, which you can just scoop up and brush it in. Some of this is going to be covered by my hill. Yeah, I can feel that the paint is just starting to slow down a little bit. I'm not getting any drag marks. If you start feeling like your brush is dragging, don't add water, add a little bit of extra white, cake mix the white in. Now, I am not worried about a perfect sky blend because I know that I'm going to add some clouds over the top, but I do want to have a little bit, I'm just leaning towards you, sorry about this. Hope I'm not covering the frame too much, but just so I can see from a distance what's going on. I do want to have a little bit more depth of colour up in that top corner. So again, just a little bit of blue, cake mix through, and then left and right. So you see the process. I've started with a small amount of blue and then kept on adding it in a small quantity, rather than having a really strong, intense colour at the outset and having to dilute it by adding lots of white. You know, diluting the colour, I mean, not the actual paint quality. So just see how that just blends in really nicely. So we're getting I mean, ultramarine does lend itself to that lovely sky tone. I do concede that. Okay, so a nice soft background colour. I'm just going to step back so I can have a look at, there's a few little patches here and there. I'm going to keep adding some blue into that top layer so you can, I've just run out of blue, so I need to get some more. So you can see how to continuously build up a depth of tone if that is in fact what you would like to do. So let's get a really good blob now so I can over egg the pudding. Cake mix, cake mix. You'll notice I have a lot of food analogies in my videos, and I do like a good bit of cake. So back and forth, back and forth. Here we go. So that is obviously a lot more intense, far more saturated colour. You may find that your first blue stripe looked like that. So let's add that in and change the pressure of your brush. As you can see what is happening each time you make a pass across the painting, and you will be picking up paint from the sides and put that onto the canvas so you can keep using it. And as you will notice the difference when you're pressing more lightly than when you're pressing quite firmly. Now just a little step back to see, yeah, I certainly don't mind this little hazy bit in the middle. And you really can spend an entire day just going back and forth, not with the same layer of paint because it will dry, but getting the sky in the way that you want it. And you may find that actually, once this is dried, you might feel that the layer is too thick or there's too many streaks in it that you're not happy with. Just do it again. Just, if you are not happy with something, get more and more confident about regarding this as a learning process and layering and practice, and be unafraid about painting over things. Every time you do a new layer, you'll learn something new. I'm just using a paint now, by the way. My sky is not going, our sky I should say, is not going to come all this way down, but the background blue is going to be quite helpful with the next layer of land with the hills. So I'm just going to bring that tone all the way down. Don't worry if you've run out of blue or you didn't have your white coming all the way to the bottom of the canvas. I'm simply using up colour. Right, now, because I adore palette knife and I want to integrate palette knife and the texture of palette knife into everything I do, I'm obsessed with the abstract shapes that palette knife creates. I'm going to demonstrate putting on some palette knife clouds directly onto the white surface, the wet surface of this background. So I'm just going to pop my brush into the water, get some white, splodge some white onto my palette. Now this is the medium diamond shaped palette knife that I'm going to use. Just got a massive blob of excited white that's dripping away. Now when I pick up palette knife paint, see how I'm moving the palette knife left to right across the pile of paint rather than mixing in like this, because there's no point in getting any paint on the top of the knife because you can't use it. You only want to have paint on the bottom if possible. So sliding it left to right like that, getting a whole heap of, oh look at that, that's brilliant. That was the edge of my paper cutting through that lovely soft blend. So we're going to have a cloud right there. This is, you can always work around any mistakes that you make. And that's not a mistake, it's showing me where to put the cloud. So I got a fair bit of white on the bottom. Now, as always with palette knife, it's about altering your pressure, adjusting it to the surface that you're attaching the paint to. So this is very wet, so there'll be a lot of suction. I don't want to get this stuck in the paint and to start scraping the paint off. So I've got a very, very light touch, and I want to position the palette knife parallel to the canvas. So try not to tilt it. You might find that you do tilt the knife when you start using it and end up scratching with the toe or the heel. Now here, what a good thing to do is often just to make a little mark, like it's not a little mark, but make a mark with the palette knife so your eye and your brain can actually connect with the canvas, and you can see, right, that is the feeling I get when the palette knife suctions onto the paint. And from that blob, now I very, very gently, lightly move the knife across. Now you can see there, you see those marks, top and bottom. Those are created by the fact that I'm actually tilting the knife too much and it's scratching into the paint there and down there. So I'm removing the paint and cutting through those layers in a way that I don't want to. So the way to counteract that is not to have the palette knife at this angle. What I will do is I will change direction to possibly hold it like this. And then I can have a better sense of control. Just for my hand, I find it easier to have the knife going this way rather than that way. See how like tense my shoulder gets as soon as I start holding it like this? But if I hold the knife that way, suddenly my shoulder is open and I've got a lot more looseness, which hopefully won't cut through that layer of blue sky. So I'm just picking up some more white from my palette in the way that I showed you. Again, making sure I've got a fair bit of white on there because I want to create a layer on top of the sky, and just very lightly, just letting the white just mix, blend, stroking it so gently across the surface of the blue. And now changing direction a little bit, perhaps bringing the knife down. And all the time I'm noticing what's happening with the way that the knife is connecting with the canvas, the way that the blue is mixing in. Where I've got thicker sections of white, of course, you have this lovely sense of thicker cloud, and then it becomes quite misty and transparent, like those lovely cirrus clouds that you get, the really fine ones high up in the sky. Now, I put a cloud here because I've made a mark on the canvas, but you can actually decide where your clouds go based on areas of the background that you want to leave or areas that you want to cover up. So it's a great way to, if you've got any big streaks, perfect, put a few clouds there. So I'm going to use the same angle, the sideways angle. Remember I said that I find this quite challenging, but here, have it even from the side, quite an extreme angle. Just starting with a blob, and then allowing the knife to move that paint around. And I can feel that the sky underneath is quite thin. You see how I'm starting to scratch in a little bit? Because I went back and forth quite a lot with adding different blue layers, I've made the sky quite thin, and I just want to be very aware of not scraping off too much of that to raw canvas, because I don't want to expose any areas of raw canvas. Of course, if I do, I know that I can just paint over. I can always start again and regard this as excellent practice and a little bit of fun on a rainy day or a sunny day or whenever you feel like painting. So this method of adding in some cloud shape, and I'll show you how to alter these and add in a little bit of brushwork when the canvas is dry, but you won't get the same kind of blend in the paint with the palette knife when it's dry. Now I'm starting to like these sort of scratchy scrapes, or maybe it's just because I can't get rid of them, but they are adding, whoops, that is going to be where the hill comes in. I started taking off too much of the paint there. There's something about the process of creating abstract shapes, especially for organic, natural objects, which feels very realistic. It's so hard to recreate an abstraction of nature in a cloud, for instance, where you want to create an impression. We're not making a photographic representation here. This is a painting. If you want a photograph of the clouds, go and take a photograph. This is our expression of what we're looking at in the sky. And these, I particularly like what's happening here with the way that the blue has started to become really blended with the white. And I can add more and more white later when it's dry to get the really strong colours coming through, the bright whites. But again, just a slightly different angle. This time I am holding the knife a little bit more vertically, but I've started to feel a bit more confident with the way that I'm applying the paint, because I've done a few passes now with the knife, starting to feel like, okay, maybe I can experiment with moving the knife around a couple of different ways. I don't want to completely overdo it, because I really like some areas of the sky which are going to remain open. But let's see, I think maybe that's too much of a rectangular block. What do you think? Let's just break that up slightly. A really good rule of thumb for anything which needs to be altered is, if you keep looking at an area of your painting, it's usually not because it's very exciting to look at. It's usually because there's something wrong with the way that you've applied the light and the shade, or you've created a pattern. Just bit my tongue there. See that? What was I trying to say? There's usually, if you created a pattern like that rectangle, or some kind of naturally geometric shape in an organic setting, your eye will look at it straight away, because you're trying to work out, why is there a rectangle of cloud in a otherwise very soft organic background and setting? So look for those giveaways, for those clues for what needs to be changed. It's the thing that you look at straight away. Like, why are you focusing on that section of your painting? Is it that the light balance needs to alter, or have you created a pattern or a geometric shape which needs some editing? I'm going to leave she says as she starts applying more white, I'm going to just pause with that's very strange. I don't know whether you can hear that, but my printer, which is switched off, has just switched itself on. So there's all sorts of things trying to communicate with us just at the moment. Me biting my tongue, the printer turning itself on. Was somebody trying to tell me just to stop because I've done too much and I'm about to overdo it? You can never overdo an acrylic painting, because you can just, if you push it too far, repaint it. Keep using it as practice. Oh, you see, I'm glad I did that. That looks lovely. I always think that there's a point to going one step further, because you never know what lovely mark you're going to make. I'm just going to lighten this a tiny bit, and by lighten it, I mean I'm going to scrape a little bit of that paint off to bring out just a little bit of that blue. That has become way too smooth and obvious for me, so I'm going to remove a little bit of the white by pressing very lightly and scraping back. And now I'm going to take a little bit of blue on my palette knife, as you can see there, and introduce the blue back in over the top. So now we're mixing in that pure ultramarine. Look how strong and bright that looks after we've blended it so beautifully. It's a really, really powerful colour, isn't it? So what I want to do is make sure that I keep on just going back and forth, just very gently, lightly blending that pure blue into the cloud shape that I felt was just too bland. A little bit more white on there to go back over the top. Now we're talking. Now we're making some interesting shapes. Sometimes you've just got to keep going, keep experimenting, keep trying new techniques. Never be afraid to just take it one step further for that beautiful little moment of excitement. Now, I just love that kind of effect there. So even though this is a very dark space of blue, and maybe doesn't make sense with what's going on up there. I love the effect here. So possibly later on, I might want to add a little bit of additional blue. I could also try some dry brushing up there when the painting is completely dry to add in some extra tint. But I think that has made a really interesting start to our sky and our background. And while it's still wet, and I'm just searching for a brush that I've managed to misplace, I'm just going to hang on 1 second. There we go. So I'm going to use a second 5 centimetre 2 inch flat brush. I have quite a lot of brushes, so I didn't want to stop and dry the one that I used for blending. If you don't have 2 of these, use a smaller brush, it's absolutely fine. Make sure though, when you're blending, when you're carrying on painting into a wet surface, remember what I said about adding in water, over the white. You will start to dilute it, you'll create holes in the background. So if you've had to pause to wash a big brush, don't. Because unless your brush is totally dry, there's going to be a fair bit of water still in there, which is going to really impact this next layer. Even though this is just background, we're just planning out where the paint is going to go, the shapes that we're going to make in the landscape. You don't want to have water and paint starting to drip down your canvas. So either use a smaller brush or make sure that your brush is completely dry before you start mixing in over the top of this wet layer. So what I've got here, I've still got my Cadmium Red medium and this is a yellow light. And I want to bring in a hilly scene. So with the bit of blue that I've got left over, still just about alive, I'm going to add some of this light yellow. I'm just going to mix this in on my palette rather than directly onto the painting, just to show you the green that I can start to mix in. Now this is just planning out where all of the hills are going to go. So clearly, because I have an entirely wet white and blue canvas, this is going to greatly affect the colour that is produced when I add on the green. And I want that. I want there to be a sense of sort of smoothness and distance. So it'll be looking a little bit misty, a little bit further away because of the white. And knowing that I'm going to be adding on layers and this is just a planning stage. So I'm just going to step back a tiny little bit so I can see from your perspective what is going on with my sky. Okay, now I feel that this is not very successful. So this is where we're going to have a hill. So the edge, and you can see how very faint the colour is because I'm blending it into a huge amount of white paint here. And this is just to start planning in those shapes. And I feel like we want a curve here. It's always nice to have, you know, a soft line where your eye can start taking on a little journey. So I'm going to bring that up a little bit, cutting through, let's say there. And how about we're going to have an overlapping hill on this side. Now, I don't want those to be exactly the same level. That is a trap I don't want to fall into. So let's bring that down here and that. And let's have this one folding across the front like that. Now I've added just a little bit of extra blue onto the palette. And I'm going to take a good blob of the yellow now. Really good blob. And just mix that in. Start creating some really soft layers, soft lines. Doesn't matter at this stage that these aren't blended. This is planning stage. More yellow and blue, creating that green into this hill on the left. And I'm getting a nice ridge. I love that when the paint creates a little bit of texture. It won't stay like that because when the water evaporates out of the acrylic, you get a lot of flattening with the texture. But while there's a ridge there at the moment, it doesn't matter at all. I really like it. And there will be enough of a ridge there when it's dried for me to utilize that as an edge if I want to. So just blending that little bit of yellow and blue into back and forth, as you can see, so I can get a really nice soft colour. Bringing that all the way down here. So I'm making sure that my brain knows that we've got hills in the foreground. Now I'm just picking up some of the leftover blue, putting that back, just working through, getting used to that lovely soft curve feeling of the landscape. You see I'm still working on the left hand hill, partly because it's close to me, partly to just keep blending a nice colour in to that section while I'm thinking about that hill. So we're getting that lovely soft feeling of rolling hills off in the distance, which is making this look even brighter, isn't it? Now, when this is dried, I might feel that that blue is just too obvious and then I can soften it. But for the time being, I love the abstract pattern that is created by the blue and the white far too much to do anything about that. Your sky and your hills will already look completely different to mine, and that is the joy of your own hand working on your painting and your own eye deciding where you want your lines to go. We've got a very simple fold of two hills there, and I feel that probably round about there, maybe this will end that one. Perhaps we'll fold into this field. There's going to be a field here. So I'm just going to scrape a little bit of paint away. And I'm sure we're going to incorporate some kind of path or road. I'm just drawing in with the brush on the side, just to start getting a sense of what I'm building up here. Now you see those stop-start marks with the brush. I don't want those. So that's partly why I keep doing long strokes. Ooh, this is a nice bright green. And having a lighter, brighter, I've just added yellow in, by the way, taking pure yellow, well, it's kind of muddied pure yellow from here. Woo! Adding in the pure colour into the closer object will make it look much nearer, much closer, much. Oh, just paint Charlotte. There we go. So that is looking a little bit too cartoony, curvy, but who cares? I'm just planning out where these objects are going to be, where the landscape is going to take us. And there we have already, in a very short space of time, created a template for our painting, and we can see now at least where we need to focus our light, our shade, what's in the foreground, any areas that we might need to continue working on. Of course we can. We can keep working on any parts of this painting as much as we want to, but at this point I'm going to pause and just step back. I might add a little bit more into the hills. Oh, she says as she just scrapes a bit off with her finger. Spatial awareness is not the best today. I might add a little bit more into the hills because I've got this big blob of red that I haven't used yet. But I'm just going to stop, step back, have a think, and I'll talk to you in a couple of minutes. All right?